genetic engineering of foodstuffs for us as well as the animals we eat and other crops, for example, cotton. This is a really hot topic right now because it has just exploded, especially in the United States. But what is it? It's the direct manipulation of the DNA of an organism, and it has been called the new Prometheus. Remember, that was the demigod who brought fire from the gods, from Olympus down to people, us, or the new Frankenfood, which is kind of clever, but they are honestly very scared of it. How does the genetic engineering work? Well, it's kind of an expansion of crossbreeding. Farmers have improved their crops and animals by breeding for desirable traits. This is kind of an uncertain and often lengthy process. Multiple generations are usually required, but now we can perform this with relatively quickly and with great certainty. And they're using the tools of modern microbiology, or I'm sorry, molecular biology, to introduce genes for desired traits into both animals and plants. Yeah, they are doing this for animals. These organisms are called transgenic. Trans, like transcontinental, it means across. And genetic, of course, genes. So it means that they contain one or more genes transferred from another species. The media, though, and marketplace, you'll see, like at Whole Foods, calls it genetically modified organisms or GMOs. Okay, why are they doing this? This is for the transgenic plants. They're trying to decrease the cost of growing crops, making them more drought resistant, for example, reduce the environmental impacts of agriculture, reducing the amount of herbicides and pesticides. That sounds like a very good thing. The herbicides, they make them so that they are tolerant, they don't get killed by something like a Roundup, which is the most widely used, but the weeds do. And pesticides, they have them growing their own pesticides, so you don't have to. And that is a big cost reduction. To give nutritional benefits to the consumer, here I'm thinking of yellow rice. Yellow rice has been grown or produced, I guess is a better way to call it, for its higher vitamin A content, which reduces the chances of blindness. Now, I know there's a lot of vocabulary, but we've seen it already. The transgenic, the second one's crossbreeding. Now, the last three, HT this is the kind of the two camps. Herbicide tolerant crops, they're developed to survive application of specific herbicides. And as I was saying, Roundup is probably the one we're looking at primarily, that previously would have destroyed the crop along with the targeted weeds. And then BT, this is interesting because it's a specific soil bacterium, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. That's why we call it BT. It is insect resistant because they introduce it to the bacterium. The bacterium is drawn up into the corn, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like we're hitching a ride on the back of the bacterium. And these bacteria produce a protein that is toxic to specific insects and protecting the plant over its entire life. And the fear of some people is, wait, we're eating that fruit of that plant, like corn, and what's happening to us. But that is something that people have a concern of. And then stacked, the varieties have both traits. Okay, why are we bringing this up? Well, Jiminy Christmas, look at this. This is the this is the U.S. only. Here are different types of crops: soybeans, cotton, corn, and we have the herbicide tolerant versus the pesticides. Remember, this is the one that produces its own pesticides, the BT. And the HT guys, these are the ones that are herbicide tolerant. And we started with almost nothing, friends, and now look at 2012. 2012 we are getting close to 100% for soybeans and 80% for cotton. Percentage of planted acres, again, the numbers are staggering. And the one at the bottom is simply for corn. This is just stacked varieties. That's with both of them, remember. And this is percent of all corn planted in 2000, which is, let's count together, that's only 12, 13, 14 years ago, depending when you're watching this. We had none in Ohio. Ohio's right there. Bing, 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 moving up to 2012. This is amazing. In Ohio, we've got 76. North Dakota's 96. Let's find a big one. Corn in Iowa is a very popular crop, and 90+% there. Nebraska as well. So this has just been amazing. As I say, 85% of corn and 93% of soybeans are now genetically modified. Why is so much corn grown with these seeds? Because corn is susceptible to this nasty little friend here called the European corn borer and rootworm, and it can be modified again, like I say, to produce its own insecticide. So it only works when the little guy tries to yum 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 eat his way in, and it kills him very well. The GM crops have been implicated in massive die-offs of certain insects. Their fear is it's working on bees and monarchs. Remember, they have to eat the plant, though. It's not, they probably, okay, let me start over again. Think about if you had sprayed the entire crop with this pesticide. It would also have an impact on these benevolent insects. They are made to resist herbicides, and so they do not have to put a lot of herbicides all over. How can corn be made to resist it? We teach it to make its own chemicals. Each cell of the corn has a complete set of instructions, right? This is passed on from generation to generation. It's called the genome. Genes are short sections of instructions that govern specific reactions, chemicals, or events in the cells. So they're the architects of thousands of different proteins. And if a gene is changed, then an inheritable trait changes. And our friend the soil bacterium, Bt, has the genes to make insecticidal proteins, that, like I said before, so that taking a gene out of the bacteria and inserting it into the corn plant, we have corn plants that produce this insecticidal protein. And this has been used for a while. And here's a representation, very simplistic. So here's the host cell. This is where we're heading. This is where we want. This is where the plant that we're looking for. And we have a certain trait that we wish to. We copy it, we take it out, and we insert it into the host. And they call it the guest gene, although it stays forever. And the interspecies vector, they've got lovely words here. They simply mean that they've inserted a trait into the gene directly, and the guest gene produces then this new protein. Well, the guest gene plus the host genome now work together. And it's not just crops. I mean, crops, these are other reasons. And again, the first set, why they're doing it, I'd like you to know that that's probably going to be seen on the exam. This is more stuff, but more crops are resistant to disease, tolerant of stresses, salt, heat, drought, and then they can produce high yields. They're using it to produce enzymes to produce new drugs. This is kind of fascinating because it is much easier to feed somebody a vaccine than it is to inject them. You don't need special nurses. You just send them, I don't know, I picture an ice cream cone with tetanus in it, but tetanus shot in it, a tetanus anti-vaccine in it, but I doubt that it'll be that nice. But it is much, much easier to disperse and to, doesn't have to be refrigerated. It can be kept, it makes it a lot more accessible around the world. Genetically engineered agricultural and transgenic plants have freaked out a lot of people, and people are concerned that it is got many unknowns associated with it. Plus, they're concerned that the big multinational companies are controlling the patents on these. So what happens, since they hold the key, they also sell it at the price they want. But there's many different areas that are just amazing. For example, they can make apples that never get brown. And you think about how much fruit is discarded for minor bruising. We like our apples perfect. And we've been eating genetically modified foods for a very, very long time. But we worry about eating foods that we directly bite into. That is the new thing here. And this was 2012 where I found this article in the New York Times. The U.S. Apple Association opposes this. They're afraid that people are going to feel like the apple is no longer a healthy and wholesome natural food. But you look at the top, which does not contain genetically modified ingredients. The answer right now would be apples. But we've got honey that does, we have dairy products, even diet soda, because aspartame is produced genetically modified from genetically modified crops. And they also worry about the spreading of these into their own apple orchards, because apple pollen does not drift very far, and because apple seeds falling on the ground do not usually result in a tree growing. The OSF says it's unlikely. Most reproduction of apple trees is by grafting.